Despite the rallying efforts of global communities, including pledges under the Paris Agreement to cut emissions level, the world still remains on fire, Mr. President. This is further compounded by destructive floods and rising sea levels. And let me pass Papua New Guinea's sympathies to the victims of the flood in Pakistan. These effects on our coastal communities include displacement of many and loss of identity as a people, and in my own country and across the Pacific region and beyond, the carbon emission level continues to cause destruction, and the destructive spiral is getting out of control. We cannot and must not allow this to continue, Mr. President, and I again reiterate my call I made last year to this August hall. My country, as one of the largest standing pristine tropical rainforests of the world, is one of the few, if I could repeat, one of the few carbon positive countries of the world. We remove more carbon than we emit. Over the past 5 years or so, we have reduced our national forest emission by 53%. This totals over 75 million tons of United Nations verified REED plus credits that will be on the market by the end of this year. My government has adopted our Climate Management Act, and this year we have set in place our nationally determined contribution regulation. We now have the legislation needed to implement the Paris Agreement. We have also endorsed our nationally determined contributions implementation plan and the NDC electricity roadmap and the agriculture, forestry, and other land use NCD roadmaps. We are also drafting our first electric vehicle policy and working towards endorsing our national adaptation plan. It is, however, despite small countries like Papua New Guinea who don't have many or big carbon footprints, it is, however, disheartening to note that despite our proactive national efforts to implement our Paris Agreement commitment, we seem to be getting the raw end of the deal all the time. We have done our part. We have had little support from the global north, including our submissions to the Green Climate Fund. We have not, however, lost all hope, despite the fact that the REED Plus and the forest nations were almost forgotten in the Glasgow conversations. We cannot be placated by toothless pledges anymore. We need the power of sovereign carbon markets that fully comply with the Paris Agreement. The world cannot talk about climate change without talking about forest conservation and proper land use management. Papua New Guinea is calling now for an urgent global focus on conservation, preservation, and sustainability of our global forests with proper land use practices, because only in our DA3s of the forest that you find the dual benefit of carbon cleansing and oxygen production. Excellencies, I was given a rare privilege of meeting His Majesty King Charles III, where his views shared with me on forest is the same as I am mentioning here today, and that the world, especially those whose carbon footprints of a Mother Earth is the greatest, must help preserve the forests of the earth that commensurates their levels of emissions. This is incumbent upon all nations. We must preserve our forests. It is Papua New Guinea's humble view that the atmospheric balance of oxygen and carbon should be ranked the number one focus of all mankind, because therein lies the sustenance of life, and the DA3s of our forests plays this balancing act as created by Creator God. The world must save our forests, because not to do so is suicidal, and is suicidal for the Earth's future. We are living a gloomy future for our children. This is something we must correct at COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh. This must be corrected. Let us not forget that there is more carbon stored in the world's forests than held in the known coal, oil, and gas reserves. In short, if we lose our rainforests, climate stability is impossible. We may as well kiss the temperature goal of 1.5 degrees goodbye. We and the other rainforest nations are trying our best to balance forest harvest for our development needs, at the same time conserving for the world need. We need help here. You have to hear us. Our planet is fragile. Time is short. Together, we can do it. For not to do so is to the detriment of planet Earth. And on my final point on climate change, given the increasing adverse impact of climate change on our communities, I would also like to echo Papua New Guinea's strong support for our Melanesian neighbor Vanuatu's initiative to seek International Court of Justice advisory opinion on the existential threat, and welcome others to join the Pacific and Caribbean and other partners to take this forward in this General Assembly for our common good.